Happy evening to you all. Thank you very much for joining to this webinar. I'm sure all of you are safe and all of you are doing well. Let's all create a lot of positivity in the entire ecosystem. People are doing a lot of negativity. The good has to make some noise. Yeah, there can be a lot more happening. We could have done 100 things more. But having said that, we have already done 200 things. Staying at home and working at home has been very, very unique for all of us. We have not experienced this before, and this is my possibly third decade, 30 years I have been in profession, and this possibly the first time I'm staying at home like this. But having said that, work is happening, things are under control, God is always there. With this starting thought process, thank you for joining the webinar. And we would like to just introduce the three speakers, and Prashant will put in the first slide. I would be taking a few minutes for your time. I'll give you an overall view of what is happening. Prashant, if you can put on the slide, it will be helpful. I would start off with giving you what we would be doing in the next 30-40 minutes. And subsequent to that, Prashant will take over. I'll give you an overview of the webinar, plus what is the RBI telling and what RBI is looking at this. And then my partner Prashant, who is a tax expert, and he will take a few thought processes about the labor, especially with the fact that whether I should pay salaries or no, and what would happen to the force majeure, should I pay rent, what would happen to your contracts and stuff like that. Of course, he will also touch upon a few of the compliances with reference to some extension. Then Sri Lakshmi, my other partner, would join in, and she will take issues relating to what is happening in the corporate law, what is happening in the foreign trade policies. We have culminated too many notifications from too many departments, and at this point of time, many of the things are just coming in press. There are no release of reading material to this. So I thought it would be a good idea to join all this to a single slot. So just to give it the compliance issues, next slide, please. We will cover about what are the RBI measures taken up. Please keep an eye on the color coding, because when I'm talking about the RBI measures, it would be the navy blue. When we talk about the banking regulation, it would be the indigo or a violet. Then again, it would become the other color of blue. And when Companies Act comes, it would become a brownish maroon or things like that. These are the color coding. We will talk about the RBI, banking laws, GST, and income tax, foreign trade policy, vehicle and insurance, the corporate laws, the employment laws, and the IBC. And we'll try to make it as simple as possible, because the audience comprise of SMEs, audience comprise of traders, businessmen, and a few co-professionals. So coming to the RBI part of it, that is my next slide. The Reserve Bank has, you can see in this slide, given two thought processes. One is for the banks, what does the banks have to do, and one directly to the borrowers. Having said that, even though it is given to the banks, it is only to the borrowers which would get the final impact. But there is a direct impact on the borrowers is the right side of the ball, and the left side of the ball is what is the Reserve Bank trying to do. As I was seeing this slide, I was speaking to a couple of my CPA friends in US and also CPA friends in Australia. They were amazed at the measures taken in India, unlike the measures which are taken elsewhere. Now, whether it is the COVID measures or whether it is the stay-at-home measures or the police, all the angels who are fighting for us, or the banks or the Reserve Bank of India, possibly we are leading the world. Just look at the changes the banks has done. What has been done and what does it mean? So the Reserve Bank reduced the repo rate from 5.15 to 4.4. But having said that, again, it reduced further. This is the second measures which it came. And what does a repo rate means? A repo rate means there is a bank and there is a Reserve Bank. At what rate the bank can borrow money from the Reserve Bank? So it is a loan given by the Reserve Bank to the bank. It's a simple thing. And the bank will have to pay interest to this. The interest paid by the bank to the Reserve Bank is called as the repo rate. And The banks has got two sources of funding. One is when you and me keep money in savings bank account, or we keep money in current accounts or fixed deposit accounts. That would be a source of money for the bank. And the second source of money is capital, where it raises money from public issue or it borrows from the Reserve Bank. A large part of money comes from the Reserve Bank. So if the borrowing from FD is at 6.5, suppose I keep money in a bank and take a fixed deposit, I get 6.5% from the bank. That means the bank is borrowing from Guru at 6.5%. But all of a sudden, the bank is getting to borrow at RBI at 4.4%. Two advantages. If the bank has to borrow from Guru, he has to create a customer. So customer creation cost is very high. Customer loyalty cost is very high. Plus rate of interest is 2% more than the RBI. But if it is there in RBI, there is no customer creation cost. There is nothing called loyalty because they're all the same. And it borrows at a much lower cost. So when the repo rate goes down, the bank is getting funds at a lower cost, and obviously they will be able to lend it much lower. How does it affect you and me? Just in a matter of few months, maybe 2 months or 1.5 months, EMIs will become cheaper, CC limits will become cheaper, bank loans will become cheaper, our home loans, vehicle loans will become cheaper. The second is also an important thing, reverse repo. Suppose the bank has got more money, bank will give a loan to Reserve Bank. At that time, the Reserve Bank again pays interest to the bank. Now that the Reserve Bank reduced it from 4.9% to 4%. Now what does it mean? The Reserve Bank is telling, boss, don't pay me money. Keep the money in the bank. You don't deposit here, because if you deposit, the Canara Bank or the Corporation Bank is borrowing fixed deposit at 6.5 and it is parking money in Reserve Bank, it is only getting 4%. That would be a huge loss. So instead, what the bank would do is, why would I give it to Reserve Bank? Instead of borrowing at fixed deposit at 6.5%, if you go to Kotak Bank or a new bank which I came across, I don't get the name right now, the rate of interest on SB is 6%. So if the bank is borrowing at 6% from Guru, why would it lend it to a Reserve Bank at 4%? It would rather lend it in the market at 8.5%. So in this method, the Reserve Bank is now telling, I will only pay you 4%. I'm not going to pay you 4.9%. So repo rate is what the banks borrow from the Reserve Bank, and reverse repo rate is when the bank has got excess money. Having said that, the first time the RBI mentioned the reduce the repo rates from 5.15%, it came to 4.4%. The second time when the governor recently spoke in the handsome suit, he has reduced it to 3.75%, never ever before this. We'll jump to the next one. Next slide, please. Then the CRR has reduced from 4% to 3%. What is the meaning of a CRR? CRR means Canara Bank has got 100 crores. And if it has got 100 crores, Canara Bank cannot just go and lend 100 crores. It has to keep 4% with Reserve Bank as cash. That means the 4% of 100 crores is 4 crores. Canara Bank will have to go and keep it as CRR with the Reserve Bank. That 4% has been reduced to 3%. What is the translation of this? That means the bank is getting 1,37,000 crores. As we speak now, all the banks put together would have 137 lakh crores. 1% of that is 1,37 lakh crores present with the bank. To that extent, bank has got free cash which it can lend. That will improve liquidity substantially. Now again, what is the MSF facility? Banks have government bonds. Banks will put the extra money in government bonds because they want to de-risk. If banks take 100 crores loan and give it to ABC, who are private individuals, they're taking a huge risk, but they earn more interest. So to reduce the risk, the bank will go and put money in the bond. So even that bonds, the MSF facility tells that, let the bank come and give. An ICICI Bank or HDFC Bank goes to Reserve Bank, keeps the government bonds and takes loan. Now what is this done is, both the repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR and MSF has given a huge sum of money to the banks. Next one, Krishan. Now again, if you look at long-term repo rates, it's a fantastic measure. For a long time, long-term repo rates have been not implemented in India. Each of these provisions will have a huge impact on your credit card limits, on your home loan limits, on your home loan rate of interest, working capital interest, all will come down. Already some banks have reduced it. State Bank of India has reduced it already. It's a matter of few days before the banks meet and start reducing everything. They're not reducing it now because either which ways you have 3 months time to pay. So possibly some banks are just taking it comfortable, seeing their cash floats and then reducing it. What is the measure of a long-term repo rates? What is the meaning of a long-term repo rates is the banks borrow at 4.4% instead of 6.5%. In a fixed deposit, when Guru keeps the money in the bank, they pay 6.5% to me. That means the bank is borrowing at 6.5%. But now the bank is giving a long-term repo of 4.4%. I think even this has got reduced to 4%. What does it mean? This money the banks can pick up from the bank, Reserve Bank, and they have to invest it only in corporate bonds. What is the advantage of this? Corporate bonds in companies like the Tatas or the Reliances or any of these larger ones, they create a bond market which are listed in the stock exchange. I and you would be happy to invest in the bond market because it is very secure. So the banks also will invest in the bond market. They would get a rate of return of 7% or 7.5%, but they're borrowing from the Reserve Bank at 4.4%. So the profit of the bank is 7 minus 4.4 is a clear profit without any infrastructure cost. Now, what is the benefit of this for a common man? When the corporates raise money on bonds, the bonds are long term, they're tradable in the market. So the corporate gets a lot more liquidity. They can open manufacturing facilities. They can start so many other activities. They can lend. If it is a NBFC, they can do lending. If it is a manufacturing company, if it is a Tata's, they can do it in TCS, so on and so forth. What is the benefit for an individual? An individual can get a steady rate of income. One. Second, bonds are tradable. He can trade it in the stock exchange. He can take loan on the bonds. So it is pretty much liquid. And the other important thing banks were told is don't pay dividends. Keep the money with you, lend. And my colleague Prashant will address the next parts. But whatever I have addressed till now has given a huge amount of money to the banks. Now banks will have a flush of money. Right now there is no economic activity happening in India. You don't find too many shops opening, too many malls opening. There is hardly anything happening. So this is one way where the banks will be able to fund all of us when we are going. Having said that, the credit norms have not yet changed. We were expecting an announcement today. The credit norms would change very soon. What do you mean by credit norms is? Prashant will cover a couple of them. It would become a lot more easier to take certain loans. Not that loans will become bad. Government will obviously use data analytics tools and social tools to check on all this. But having said that, credit norms will become cheaper, money will be available. In the last 4 weeks, we have approached so many banks for helping our customers, helping our clients, and it has been a very, very good treatment, especially in nationalized bank. Yeah, of course, technology is not as advanced in a nationalized bank, but implementing the RBI policies has been much faster. Implementing what the RBI thought process behind this has been very good. Prashant, you can please take over from here. I'll mute my screen. I'll look at your screen.
Thank you, Guru. Happy evening, everyone. And we will take the slides further from where Guru left. So now that he has given a lot of measures in terms of the RBI, we can now go and see a little bit micro details and check what is in it for the borrowers as such. So before that, some general reliefs are there on the banking, and some of it you are already knowing. No charges on withdrawal of cash from ATM for the next 3 months. That is going to be helpful for a lot of people in terms of drawing the cash on their need, and that is good that the bank charges are not there. Broadly, if we see the working capital requirements of the companies, at least for this presentation, I have covered letter of credits, bill discounting, and say overdraft and cash credit limits. So we know that this letter of credit and bill discounting is what we would use as a working capital, and we ensure that the banks are able to fund the imports or the purchases. Normally, there is a margin of around say 25% what the banks insist that there should be a margin from the purchaser or the investor side or the person who is taking the facility. So now the RBI has given instructions saying that the banks may review these margins, and on case to case basis, the bankers may reduce these margins from say 25% to 20% or 15%. And it is based on the banker's assessment of risk with the businessman. And additionally, if you look at overdraft and cash credit facilities, the banker determines the working capital eligibility for businessman based on certain norms. So one of the norms we see normally is uh, to quantify the working capital limits. The banker sometimes considers say 120 days of working capital as a limit to arrive at the value of the working capital. So now the RBI is giving instructions saying that the bankers may assess the situation and also increase the working capital eligibility in terms of quantum. To arrive at this quantum, they're looking at increasing the working capital requirement from 120 days to 180 days. So in case you're meeting your bankers and trying to discuss about the working capital needs, you can certainly bring this point telling that we need that 120 days to become 180 days, and what is it that you're supposed to do for that. Then of course on the interest cost, now it has become a matter of negotiation. So it is important that because
Prashant, I would just like to add in here, gentlemen who are in this webinar, when you are negotiating with the bankers, do look around, because every bank is giving different sorts of interest rates and different sort of facilities. For borrowers and for buyers of credit today, it's the right time. It's a very good fertile moment, because everybody are getting worried that we should not borrow, what would be the market. But kindly go ahead, look at the in-principle agreements, get the sanctions done. Whether you want to use it or no is a subsequent time. You could use it subsequently. But at this point of time, it would be very right to do it. Instances where you can just go and convert your CC limit to a term loan, catch up on the value of money. Instances where you want to shift up the banks under these circumstances if you're a good account. Instances if you're a bad account, where you can step down a little and tell, fine, I would like to slow down and renegotiate your margin money. This could be the right moment for you to do it. Sorry, Prashant, please take it up.
Fine, Guru. Thanks for that. So as far as the interest is concerned, the borrowal cost of the banks has come down, and that I would take you to the points what Guru had covered in his slides, where the interest cost has come down to the banks. As a result of that, there is an additional margin that is available to them. So there has to be a negotiation with the banker for better rates. So that one more point can be kept in mind. So what is it that the businessman has to do now is the businessman has to contact the bankers immediately. I mean, based on the timeline needed for the funds, of course, and request for higher working capital limits. Utmost priority would be payment of salaries and rent probably. And of course, put forth the case saying that you would need a reduced cost of funds. And as a result, you would need a reduction of interest rates. So this is one thing that the businessman can do. And in line with the RBI other instructions as such, we have seen there are moratorium of loans in terms of the EMIs being deferred for a period of 3 months. And it was applicable for March, April and May months. So one option that is given is the borrower can choose that the EMI can be pushed to the month of June, and he would be free from EMIs for the months of March, April and May. In quite a few cases, it is quite possible that by the time this was released, the March month EMI was already debited. So at the request of the borrower, the same thing can be reversed also. But then whether to opt this moratorium of loan is something that has to be seen again. For example, the impact of moratorium of loans is that the cash flow is saved to the borrower, whether it is businessman or home loan borrower. And in case if you have sufficient cash flows, there is no need to postpone the EMI, as the interest component will be more in coming months due to capitalization of interest to the principal for these 3 months. So the interest that is not paid now would get capitalized to the principal. And hence you can see, in case you have sufficient cash flows, you need not opt for it. So in case of insufficient funds, of course, moratorium has to be exercised. There is no choice there. Yeah, Guru.
Just to add to the clarity of what Prashant is telling, now moratorium is not just for the interest, it is also for the principal amount. Even the principal you can carry forward and take a moratorium on that part of it. And the second question which has come up in the chat is, even though when you are having a little of a bad track record, if you are a standard asset, that means you are servicing quarterly interest and you are not a substandard asset in terms of NPA classification. You are a standard asset, but your rating is not great. Your rating is a little low. Your CRISIL rating is not done at all, or your CARE rating is not done at all. There are instances in the past that the banks would have hesitancy in lending you further money. Even though it's not a policy right now, but the Reserve Bank governor has made it quite clear, at least in terms of the nationalized banks, that due cognizance has to be taken to the fact that the borrower has not defaulted. The borrower has struggled, but he has paid all the installments. So due cognizance have to be taken when they renegotiate, and you should be liberal with the norms to them, provided there is enough security to cover such borrowers. So there should be enough security, which is already there. The security in terms of your margin money, in terms of stock or equity, is not the issue, because that is going to be reduced when Prashant is going to come up. The security in terms of your collateral is the issue. In case any of your banks are not giving any of these situations where you are not getting the credit, you are going back and negotiating with the banker, please do negotiate, raise it up to the higher authorities. But in case they are not passing it along, kindly note, it is the bank's prerogative to pass the interest to the customer. It is only a directive of the RBI. RBI has reduced the interest and it has told the banks, please pass it on. It is not a law of the RBI. It is purely the bank's prerogative. That is why in many nationalized banks it has happened. But in case it is not happening with you and it is a nationalized bank, you can definitely write to the ombudsman. Even though it is not an ombudsman point, there is enough of window that the ombudsman will address this because of the COVID situation in hand.
So just for clarity, to repeat on one point, Mr. Sunil Kalra sir had mentioned that his banker is not giving moratorium on interest, which means 3 months interest will be added back to the principal and interest will be charged on the same. You're right, sir, because the moratorium is on the timing of the payment. It is not a discounting of the interest, or it is not that the interest is rebated. Interest still remains. It gets added to the principal. So moratorium means it is just extension of the date for paying the loan as such, not to take away the cost involved in this. The cost still remains. Thank you.
Prashant, you can take the questions in the last, maybe. We can go through this. You can take the questions in the last.
So we'll take the questions in the last. And Guru, one more point is on my slide on the left-hand side, if you can see, there is one box I've mentioned, deferring of interest accrued on cash credit or overdraft on working capital loans obtained extended up to May 31, 2020 is about debiting the interest, the timing of the debiting of the interest to the OD accounts, because once the interest is debited, to that extent, the limit comes down. So there is a restriction of the withdrawal limit there. So what they've done is they have extended the time when the interest would get debited to the cash credit or overdraft account. So we'll move to the next one. So one important action, I would say, is also to fund the startups and also the MSMEs in these important times. So first point is to provide quick working capital in the next 45 to 90 days to the startups who are facing financial challenges. So when it comes to the startups, the notification tells that it is related to startups recognized by the government of India. Although all of us will have different definitions of the word startup, here what the instructions mean is that the startup which is recognized by DPIIT, at least to my knowledge, the government recognizing a company as a startup is as per DPIIT. So once we look at DPIIT, there are definitions given to startups, and it says a startup is an entity which has innovation in it, and it has value build as one of the objects. It is going to build a lot of value, and it is going to generate a huge amount of employment. As a result of this, there are certain companies who would not be treated as startup, although we feel in our generic normal terms we treat it as a startup. For example, if there is a holding foreign company and an Indian subsidiary company, the subsidiary company, if we would like to register as a startup, the DPIIT will have an objection, because normally the Indian entity would keep all the IPs, etc., in a foreign holding company, and the controls would be in the foreign company. As a result of that, there are 2 or 3 cases wherein DPIIT have cancelled wrong startup registrations. So whenever the companies or the consultants are advising the clients, they have to be a little strict in terms of implementing startups so that future consequences can be avoided. But importantly, quite helpful that the startups, if it is registered under DPIIT, this working capital mechanism is starting right now by SIDBI. The second part to the SIDBI loans is the loans that is funded to MSME segments. So the loan is up to 50 lakhs at 5% interest rate with a tenure of 5 years. So it is something like, looking at the provision makes me feel 50 lakhs is good amount of money. Can I start a new business at 5% interest rate? So all MSMEs engaged in manufacturing of hand sanitizers, masks, gloves, headgear, body suits, show covers, ventilators, goggles, testing labs. These are the kind of MSMEs which have been recognized by SIDBI to award this loan of 50 lakhs. Now, most importantly, many companies may be there, or many entities may be there, which may be covered under MSME, but they might have not got registered under MSME. So they have to be very quick here, and they have to get the MSME registrations for themselves in case they are doing these manufacturings, right? And of course, avail these benefits. So this is quite a good move. If we see in terms of the funding of the capital in terms of loan to the businesses in India, I should say there is at least a little parallel that can be drawn from the loans that is being given in US now in the form of SBA loans to a lot of businesses there. So we are seeing some proactive action here also. We should see how effective this administration would be, and most importantly, the businessman has to go and check on this. Nobody is going to come to the businessman, because one thing I found was, when I spoke to a couple of bankers before this session, at least 3 branches of banks I spoke, and they said maybe it is lockdown and businessmen are busy at home. Nobody has yet approached them for the loans. So that is one thing I got. So I feel the businessmen have to go and approach the bank and start pushing on these things. So in fact, if we look at some of the banks, when I spoke to them, they gave certain criteria for the loans being given, especially for MSME. They said they can give the loans without any collateral, and no collateral loan can be given. in cases where a own house proof can be given, something like a electricity bill or deed or something. So just to give the case that, it's a owned property. And they say the business must be in existence for at least 3 years, and there has to be a turnover of more than 30 lakhs. So these norms, of course, this can change from bank to bank. When I checked with a couple of banks, they were almost similar to this. So in the case of MSME, they are able to give for services loan up to 2 crores, for manufacturing entities up to 2 crores, and for traders up to 1 crore. And the interest rate right now seems to be between 12.5 to 14%. But looking at these times, 12.5, I think they may agree. But going forward, we are not yet sure whether they'll reduce it, because these discussions in the banks is still going on. So I feel that has to come down drastically too. Then some of the banks are also looking at working capital arrangements where they can fund to 180 days. And their interest rate right now looks to be between 9.5 to 10%. I think with the kind of negotiation the businessmen can make, and they can visit multiple banks, I think banks also would be having that business competency to reduce the interest going further. And one more important thing people can think about for loans is the working capital loans. If it is convenient to the business, can it be converted to term loans if that is advantageous to you? That is one thing that can be seen. So this, I feel, were a few of the points that we had to share on the funding aspects. And I think we have to move to some of the employee related stuff now. So Guru, you have anything to add for banking? I can move to the next topic here. Okay. So as and when the lockdown came, and then we could see there was a lot of hue and cry on what would happen to the employment, etc. So the Ministry of Home Affairs came out with guidelines, and they gave some broad criteria on what the businesses should follow. So broadly, the guidelines talk about, employees should not be laid off, employee salary should not be reduced, and employee salary should be paid. So broadly, this is the guideline initially they came up with. But then the concern we feel is the employers, obviously, they would say they don't have working capital. Businesses are closed. Some of the contracts are cancelled. And as a result of that, they don't have any other way but to not pay the salary. This would be the story that would come from the employer side. But that is not that easy for the employers, because MHA guidelines is very clear in terms of, it is more employee prone, and it is not employer beneficial on the face of it, because they have to protect the cash in the hands of the people. In case the people lose their jobs, then there is a lot of concern. They don't have any more money for the general spending. So penalty and prosecution may be imposed in case there are legal cases against the employers. And in those cases, it is important that employers take certain measures. So broadly, what is that the employers should do? Basically, the employees should be classified by the employers into workers and white collared employees. Why is that? Normally, if we look at people who are workers and having wages less than, say, 15,000, salary or wages less than 15,000, lot of different protectionist laws come into their rescue. It may be Factories Act, it may be Industries Act, it may be PF or ESI Act. There are many things. So unnecessarily, all those law may be, put against the employer. And of course, we can classify the others as white collared employees who have sufficient, little larger amount of salaries. So as a step, the first step what the employer can do is they need not lay off. Let them not lay off any of the employees. Let them just reduce the salaries of workers. Let them just reduce the salary of, don't reduce salary of workers, I mean, because they come under many other acts. It will be a legal issue for sure. then the next step is don't lay off white collar employees, but then you can try to reduce their salaries. So what should be the methodology of reducing the salaries? So you have a top management who are directors, then comes the VP level, then comes the GM level, then comes the next level, above the workers, etc. So in those cases, the bigger salary cut may be taken by the directors, a little bit less by VP level, little bit less by GM, and little bit lesser cut to the employees below them. So this would give a very clear inclination on the problems that the company is going through, and that it is sending a message that just because I am paying less to the employees does not mean that I am carrying anything more home, because as a director or a VP or a GM level, those employees also are getting cut salaries at a higher rate. So in case there is a legal case tomorrow, there is at least some sort of a reasoning in the case. And although I cannot guarantee there can't be any issues legally on this, I feel there has to be some protective measures that the company has to take on these lines. Of course, other suggestions are invited here. I mean, it is welcome. And of course, recently Karnataka government CM also indicated that please do not lay off people, but at least a little pay cut is okay, right? So overall, if we see the MHA guidelines is only the guideline for the businessman to follow, and it is not for it is not that it is a law. So in case we look at the lawyers who deal on these matters, I think they may have sufficient points to cover up the employers. But then the probable recourse that I have mentioned here is my personal opinion, because at least this way, you're ensuring the employment is intact and there is sufficient cash in the hands of the people to spend their money, and you're still within the law, at least to a greater extent. So this is how the overall employee measures look to be. Guru, you have anything to add here?
Nothing, Prashant. You can go. When I want to add, I'll add in.
Oh, thanks. So next, let us look at some of the things that may happen in contracts now. So if you look at the contracts are in the major hit. Contracts gets the major hit now because the performance of contract can be enforced by other parties. For example, if somebody has contracted for some manufacture service and he has not done due to lockdown, the point is, can the other party put a legal case and ask for the performance of contract? So there may be a claim of damages in such cases. So in case the performance of contract is not possible, then quite possible that, I mean, of course, there is loss of business to the person. And in case over and above that, the damages are claimed, there is a cash loss also. So in this scenario, what is it that the businessman should do? So for that, first we need to check what is the immunity as per law, or what are the possibilities as per the Indian Contract Act. So Indian Contract Act deals with broadly two things. One is doctrine of impossibility of performance of contract and doctrine of frustration. So look at a scenario where you have in your business the transportation of goods, and for transportation of goods, you require airways to work. The planes should work. And now in these situations, the entire air industry is locked. So they are not flying too. So as a result of that, this leads to satisfaction of the conditions and impossibility of performance. So in these cases, there is a legal backing to tell that due to impossibility of performance, okay, the damages cannot be claimed by the other party. Or in some other cases, there can be doctrine of force majeure that can be invoked. Normally, the doctrine of force majeure is more to do with the act of God. But then what has happened now, we don't know whether it is act of God. The reason is that still people are trying to figure out whether this is something that built up naturally with animals and all that, or is it man-made? Okay, with all those logics left aside, government, at least for the government contracts, said that the contractors can invoke force majeure points for the government contracts as such. So I feel the same thing as a persuasive logic may apply to private contracts also. So at least from that perspective, the businessman can put forth their case, communicate with the other party, and clearly legally communicate over the emails, telling that these are the issues based on which the performance is not happened, and hence we're trying to invoke this clause. Of course, I understand this is not a 100% immunity, but again, all these steps are to have sufficient backup and case behind us in case something wrong happens to the businessman. So from the finance and some of the industry laws, we can go to the taxes now. The goods and service, so the taxes.
Prashant, can I just take 1 minute, and if you could go to the previous slide, there is one query which has come in. It's apt to speak on this. Thanks for all of you. We will have to speed up a little. We are already done with 40 minutes. We just have 25 minutes. We'll try to push it up as fast as possible. The two things which has to come up here is, when you're looking at the previous slides, the contract with the workers and the contract with the employees. There is a clear distinction in law. What is a blue-collared worker and who is not a blue-collared worker? Blue-collared worker is generally who comes under the Labor Act, and he is registered as a Factories Act and things like that. An accountant in an organization, a HR, a software employee, all these people would not come under the blue-collared worker. So generally, when it is a non-blue-collared worker, it is a transaction between the employer and the employee. That is why you call it as a contract, employment contract. So it would step down and become the fact that it is just a general contract. So whatever remedies are there in a general contract, that is how which will apply to these employees. So if somebody is having a software company and they want to reduce the salaries, the best, how do they reduce the salary is the contractual obligation has to be changed. That means there should be an offer from the employer. There should be an acceptance of the offer from the employee. The moment the offer is accepted, it becomes a contract. So an employer sends a mail telling that I would like to reduce your salary to 50%, and employee obviously will raise an objection. And over a negotiation and discussion, he sends a mail, fine, there is nothing I can do. That is enough acceptance. So when an offer and an acceptance is made, it would become a contract. And when an offer is made and acceptance is not made, then you'll have to go back to the termination clause. The same will happen in the contracts also. We will answer a couple of more when it comes to questions. Prashant, you can speed it up. We have very less time.
Yeah, fine. So on the goods and services tax, it is more to do with extension of the time limits. So if you look at the due dates that was there for filing the GST returns for 3B for Feb 20 and March 20, that has been extended to 24 June 2020. Otherwise, 20th of the next month, it had to be filed. And of course, for April 2020, the due date would be 24 June 2020. Now, in terms of applicability of this, it is applicable for the businessmen who have turnover exceeding 5 crores in the preceding financial year. So whoever is reading this notification, I feel, they have to look at 2 financial years here, because the first part is, it says due date for tax period Feb 20 and March 20. Previous financial year for this is March 19. And as far as April 20 is concerned, the previous financial year is March 20. That is financial year 1920. So these have to be individually checked for the aggregate turnover if it has crossed more than 5 crores or not. Then we have aggregate turnover more than 1.5 crores, but up to 5 crores in the preceding financial year. And this also has an extension of for Feb and March 20 up to 29 June 2020. And for April, it is 30th June 2020. And the logic of preceding financial year has to be checked for March 20 and April 20 accordingly. So the relief that is granted here is for turnover more than 5 crores entities, interest will be charged at 99%, only 9% instead of 18%. And this can be, this interest would be applicable after 15 days of the original due date. So if the original due date is 20th March for Feb return, and so the 4th April would become the end of the 15 days. And post that also the payment is not done. That is when the 9% interest would trigger. Of course, for turnover between 1.5 crores to 5 crores, there is no interest and late fees as such. Then for people having turnover less than 1.5 crores, normally these people may be registered under composition. So in all these cases, the extended due dates, instead of 20th of next month, it has become 30th June for Feb, 3rd July for March, and 6th July for April. So in all these cases, the relief is that there is no interest and late fees. In the same way, the GSTR 1 also, the due dates have been extended as given in the screen here. For March 20, it is 30th June, and of course for April and May also it is 30th June 20. Otherwise, it is 11th of the succeeding month. And for turnover up to 1.5 crores, again the extended due date is 30th of June 2020. But GSTR 1, according to me, is a little tricky situation because in case GSTR 1 is not filed by one of the vendor, the buyer or the receiver of services would not get the input tax credit in his GSTR 2A. So GSTR 2A, of course, is postponed. The reconciliation of GSTR 2A to claim the input tax credit is no more there, at least till August 2020. But then it is a good practice in case GSTR 1 at least can be filed. I understand Form 3B people can take time till the extended due dates. GSTR 1 is only uploading of the invoices. So if that can be done, that is a better compliance, and it makes companies to be in, or the assessee to be in good books with the department as such. And as I told in the previous slide, of course, the GSTR 2A input tax credit reconciliation has been removed now. There was a circular notification earlier which told that input tax credit will be restricted to the ITC that you see in your GSTR 2A, and maximum to the extent of 10% of that eligible additional credit, what is appearing in 2A, you can take more if your ITC as per the books of accounts is higher than that. And later you're supposed to go and reconcile the ITC with your vendors, get it to 2A, and then only you are supposed to take ITC. So that is a good relaxation to tell that this 10% or restriction of claiming ITC is removed right now. So this goes up to August 2020 as a relief to the assessees. So of course, similar thing is there in composition dealers also. I think this screen is self-explanatory, so I'll just move to the next one. So the most delightful thing for the companies is that the government has told proactively expedite the grant of refunds to the businessman. So normally this is a process of deficiency memo being issued as and when the GST refund claim is made. Within 3 days of application, this comes. Once the deficiency memo is responded to, the department is issuing the acknowledgement the very next day now. On the same end of the day, they are issuing refund orders also under RFD 06 if deficiency memo is resolved. So there was a recent circular. Unfortunately, it says the refund will be done based on GSTR 2A. That shows that for the purpose of refund, still the ITC should be available in the GSTR 2A of the assessee who is claiming the refund, and the refund is restricted to what is mentioned in GSTR 2A. Hence, as an ongoing process, you should chase the vendors to file their GSTR 1 properly and that too in time. So these were some of the reliefs that we saw in GST. Now I would like to move to Income Tax Act. The first one deals with filing of income tax returns for financial year 18-19. For financial year 18-19, a belated return could be filed up to 31st March 2020. Now that has been extended up to 30th June 2020. That is applicable to all the assessees. Now, the next point is applicable to a lot of individual assessees. An individual assessee, if he makes investments in ATC investments, which may be life insurance, PPF, EPF, etc., or Mediclaim, or makes payments for donations as such, those investments or payments should have been completed by 31st March 20 for the financial year 2019-20. Now that too has been extended to 30th June 2020. So that is point number 2. Then point number 3, there are due dates that has to be followed in case an assessee claims exemption from capital gains. So exemption from capital gains can be for investment in capital gains account or construction or purchase of property. If these due dates are ending, either that period of 2 years, 3 years as the law provides, if that due date is falling between 20th March to 29th June, that has been extended to 30th of June now. So there are three big reliefs on extension. Of course, the point number one here is Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. So on Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, the extension has been done up to 30th June for payment of the taxes. For senior citizens to file Form 15G and 15H to claim lower TDS is extended to 30th June. Form 61A for specified transaction is extended to 30th June. Linking of Aadhaar and PAN is extended to 30th June. Now the next point is very important for nil deduction or lower TDS rate certificates. Whatever financial year 1920 certificate is applicable, that certificate applies till 30th June 2020. If for financial year 2021, section 197 form is still pending. Then for refund of income tax is a big relief. The government has told up to 5 lakhs refund has to be released immediately. And I saw in one of the updates 2 days back, almost 5,000 crores has been released in that. And they have a target of releasing almost 18,000 crores, which of course is a very big move. And other reliefs, the TDS on non-residents, which have P in India, is normally 30%. Now the revised rate is 10% up to 30th of June. Interest on delayed TDS payments, advance tax, self-assessment tax was at 1% or 1.5%. This has been lowered to 0.75%. So here the TDS due date is not extended, only the interest has been brought down. And there is a taxable, the tax provision of withdrawal of PF that has to be seen to ensure people have more cash. Government is allowing withdrawal from PF, but taxability is not there, or exemption is there to a limit of lower of 3 months basic in DA or 75% of the balance in PF account. So lower of this can be withdrawn and it can be exempted. So these are more to chartered accountants and not to the businessman as such. So this slide I would like to omit. Income tax refund is a process that has to be followed. If you have not received the refund, you can raise a ticket in e-filing incometax.gov.in. If it is still not addressed, then you can raise a ticket in CP Grams, which has direct reporting to PMO office. And in those cases, I feel the response would be quite faster. So with this, I would like to take off from my presentation as such, and I would like to invite Shri to take over for the company law, and for Q&A, I would return shortly.
Thanks a lot, Prashant. My portion is relatively simpler here. It is to do with the Companies Act. Mostly it's categorized into two, which is basically what are the relaxations under the law and what is the cash flow benefit you could go to. Prashant, on the next slide, please. This is the relaxations which we have under the Act. One is the meetings of the board and audit committee meetings. Earlier, the interval had to be 120 days, not more than 120 days. Now it is not more than 180 days. So 60 days has been added. So the interval can be 180 days also. CARO applicability, the new CARO had to be from the financial year 1920 itself, but that financial year now has been shifted to FY 2021. And any deposits that were supposed to have been made under the deposit repayment reserve account and the debenture redemption reserve account, that timeline has been extended to June 30th, 2020. If you look at the unpaid dividends, which were supposed to have been put under the Investor Education and Protection Fund, that due date has been given up to 30th September 2020. And lot of companies which were basically the foreign subsidiaries, when they started operations in India, they were required to get in the share capital within 180 days, which also is applicable to all the companies who are starting business. For that, the provision was earlier 180 days. Now that has been shifted to 360 days. So you will have enough time to get in capital into the company, and at the same time, you will not be defaulting on the provisions. The next slide, Prashant. This is an important provision where for certain specific companies, you are required to do CSR spending. This CSR spending, whichever has been done for COVID related activities, qualifies as CSR. A new notification was introduced by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs where it was made eligible. So you have cases like COVID related scientific research, manufacturing or distribution of kits for testing of these diseases, providing quarantine facilities, mass training of nurses and paramedical staff that you want to do, distribution of food and arrangement of shelter for doctors, opening of sanitization facilities, then any food or medicine or financial support to the poor or daily wage earners if you're providing, arrangement of ambulance, mass supply of protective gear. These type of things also, whatever you spend due to COVID can qualify as CSR spending. Of course, the contribution to PM CARES Fund, then contribution to State Disaster Management Authority, this specifically is eligible as CSR. Ex gratia payment to daily wage workers during lockdown is eligible. Payment of salary or wages during these lockdown is not eligible. Also, contribution to Chief Minister's Relief Fund or State Relief Fund is not eligible. So this is a specific point for the corporates to note, because these Chief Minister's Relief Fund or the State Relief Fund has application to several other provisions. I think the slide has slightly gone forward. Prashant, you have to go to 3 to 6 after CSR. The next slide. The other relaxations we can see are resident director provisions. For a private limited company, a resident director is mandatory under law. What they are saying here, if you don't have a resident director also, such non-compliance shall not be treated as a violation. And for certain specific class of companies where independent directors are required, the earlier rule was all independent directors are required to have at least one meeting every year. That provision has been done away with for the current year, which is 2021. If the independent directors meeting is not held also, there will not be any violation. Most important for all companies is filings in MCA. In case there are any delayed filings during the period 1/4/2020 to 30th September 2020, there will not be any additional fees for the late filing. And financial year 2021 still commences only from 1st April 2020 and not from any other time. I think there was some confusion here on the RBI circular that was issued. For private limited companies or most SMEs, whatever we are talking of here, there is no confusion and your financial year starts from April 1st, 2020 itself. A recent notification which was introduced only yesterday is where companies have a year close of December 31st, 2019. The AGM was supposed to have been conducted within 6 months of the next close of the year, which is basically you should have finished it before June 30th. That time has been extended till 30th September 2020. Prashant, next. This is an important scheme which if any of our clients have not filed their returns, which is including your annual returns within the due dates, all additional fees will be done away with during the period of April 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2020. The whole idea here is to make the companies compliant under laws and not incur huge expenses and huge penalties or interest on the late filing fees. So here, if you file the forms now, you will get immunity as well. And this particular scheme is not applicable to SH7 and charge forms. Other than this, mostly all other forms can go under the company's fresh start scheme. Even for LLPs, the same thing would apply. The next relaxation we have here is on the EGMs that can be held. Currently, no relaxation on AGM still. Annual general meeting still has to be a physical meeting, but extraordinary general meeting has been permissible via video conferences. So here, wherever we are calling for extraordinary general meeting, there are certain compliances that we have to adhere to when we do a video conference EGM that should be clearly followed. The points that I'm covering here are for companies which have 1,000 shareholders or more, where the decisions on postal ballot or e-voting is permitted. Of course, show of hands is permitted for the regular EGMs. And some things like recorded transcript of the meeting has to be made available on the website and contain clear instructions on how to attend and participate. Such things needs to be circulated to the attendees beforehand. A copy of the notice also has to be prominently displayed on the website and newspaper. And resolutions passed during such meetings, it is mandatory that we have to file that within the 60-day window with the MCA. The next two slides are relating to SEBI listed entities. Here there are several relaxations. Since we are going to make this PPT available, wherever you have clients as SEBI listed entities or companies which are SEBI listed can look at what are the relaxations that are available. This is a huge relaxation because you don't have to worry with running on the compliances and the penalties because of not doing so. Some of the important points on the day-to-day employment laws we can see are in terms of ESI, PF and PT. The ESI returns for February, which was supposed to have been done by March 15th, is now pushed to May 15th. And same relating to March is now the due date is May 15th. So you have enough time to do the contribution and file the returns. Same holds good for the PT also. These March PT can be remitted by May 2020 and also file the returns. The annual employer PT, which was supposed to have been done by April 30th, that also has been extended up to May 30th, 2020. So the idea here is no penalty or interest or damage will be levied during the extended period. The next one, of course, is your provident fund. There has been a grace period of 30 days where you were supposed to have been doing it by April 15, that is pushed to May 15. One important question that had come up here is how are we going to claim the employee-employer contribution which the government had promised to give in certain cases. To clarify this particular point, this is specifically applicable to establishments which have less than 100 employees, and out of the 100 employees, 90% of such employees should be having a gross salary less than 15,000 per month. So if you have more than 15,000 per month, you are not eligible for this. What I am given to understand is when you go to the PF portal directly, if you have this eligibility for your company, the declaration is going to come directly when a pop-up will come on your PF screen where you can opt for this. What we mean to say here is the employee and employer contribution will be given by the government directly, and you don't have to deduct such contribution from the employee if you come under the category which is mentioned as 100 employees or less and less than 15,000 gross salary. This is for the period of March, April and May. The government is helping us. Then comes your insolvency and bankruptcy code, where the earlier limit in case of a default, which was a lakh of rupees, you could go to the NCLT. IBC clearly was not a recovery mechanism, but people could go to NCLT and ask for the dues to be recovered. That limit has been increased to 1 crore. This is a very good move, where if there are MSMEs defaulting, then they will not be dragged to court because of this. The next on the foreign trade policy is extension of realization proceeds. The period was 9 months before which you had to realize the export proceeds. That has been shifted to 15 months. This is a very good move so that the tension of receiving the money or the parent company having financial difficulties need not be worried about. And then the next point on this, for all your FTP duty refunds where you had the registration cum membership certificate which was expiring after March 31st, that time period has been extended to 30th September 2020. The next is on the SEIS and MEIS, whoever were filing these service exports or the merchandise exports, certain relaxations have been given where the due dates have been extended to 31st December 2020. The whole idea here is this procedure to claim the refund or the procedure to claim these benefits was a complicated procedure if you went to the DGFT. Hence, this relaxation will give enough breathing time for people to go and claim the benefits. Then the filing of rebate of state and central tax also, along with the validity period of all the status certificates under FTP will be up to 31st March 2021. It is extended. The next and the last one we have is all of our vehicle permits. Of course, there is no scenario here now that we can visit the RTOs. The vehicle permits, which are the licenses and registrations expiring since February 1st, 2020, that period extended till June 30th. So after the lockdown gets lifted, you can go ahead and get all your permits and registrations renewed. And on the insurance bit, many of them have asked, is there any relaxation on LIC premiums that they can pay on health and motor insurance only, which were due for renewal during the period of 25th March to 3rd May, stands extended till May 15th, 2020. So that's it on the presentation that I had. I think Guru and Prashant and we will chip in on the questions that have been asked on the Q&A.
Can we have the Q&A? Okay. Please use the Zoom Q&A. Thank you very much. We have got 61 questions. We have very less time, but one thing we can do is all these questions, we'll make it to a booklet, give a concerted answer and send it to you by email. I think it should take a couple of days for that. I'll just try to skim through all the questions in the next 8-10 minutes before we hang up. What would be the impact of credit card payment is one question. Credit card is a loan in terms of a bank. So whatever moratorium and the interest carry forward stuff is there, the same would apply for credit card also. RBI has given a clarification also that credit cards will be included in this. Second, is repayment of vendor bill discounting and LC can be deferred? Exactly the same answer. Even that is a bank borrowing. Fund-based, non-fund-based limits, both can be extended by these things. How to manage the drawing power for CC limit due to delays in debtors payment for a trading unit? Unfortunately, Mr. Tarun, there is no clarification on this at all. There would be a lot of delays on the debtors, and there would be debtors which are crossing 6 months period. So the moment it happens, the bank will start reducing our DP limits. But having said that, that problem would be faced by everybody in the city or everybody in the country. So there could be a much more relaxed view in that point of time. Moratorium is definitely applicable to the private banks also. Every banks which is in the country, moratorium is applicable. The moratorium is at bank at NBFC restriction. Sorry, sir, the moratorium is only for the bank. NBFCs are not coming under the moratorium guidelines. But having said that, the second slew of rebates given by the Reserve Bank of India recently, they gave additional 50,000 rupees, 50,000 crores to the NBFCs in part of it. And 3 provisions have been also stated that the NBFCs will be treated in at the same branch of the bank, but I don't remember exactly what are the 3 provisions. When we reply in writing, we will get back to you on this. What are the provisions to be covered under MSME? Can you just move down? Okay, somebody is moving the screen. I'm not moving it. Can you just go down one question? Go up, please. Next question, anonymous attendee question. Okay. The moratorium, what are the provisions for, okay. I think this is jumping, number of questions are coming and more number of questions, this screen changes. As a builder, I have a few term loans related to building projects. Our banks are giving moratorium only on the monthly interest payment through June. Sir, it is clear, the RBI guideline is clear, the moratorium is also on the installment. It is not just on the interest payment. As a matter of fact, in many cases, the banks, even though you have paid the installment, they're reversing it because it suits the bank. You are a good borrower and it is good for you, for them not to pay you money because they're not able to disperse also to you. So they're reversing it and telling, don't pay us back, because the moment you pay you back, the moment you pay back, the bank has got more money. They don't have anybody to lend right now. Lending will happen only after the COVID has gone down. But having said that, just one mark of advice to all of you. Please start preparing your documents. Please start sending it to the banker right now. This is the right time for us to send it to the bankers. Don't wait for the COVID to be lifted. We are registered under MSME, but our business is not manufacturing. So are there any benefits for Ibeco? Same benefits whether you are manufacturing or not. It is the same benefits. Guru and Jana, the firm is also registered in MSME. So we are required to get paid within 30 days. And in case we don't get paid within 30 days, interest is supposed to come. But unfortunately, we have personally fought 3-4 cases in MSME. We did not get any light of the day. It is not such a, what the act tells is not happening in the real terms, because hardly anybody goes to MSME for a relief. They directly go to the regular court. Most startups would not be there for 3 years. So what, how to go about seeking the loan? So any of the loan in the country today, unlike the West, is purely based on the banking regulation of what is the security, what is the collateral. A startup would not have a security, a startup would not have a collateral. And in India, both intellectual property in terms of patent and trademark also would not be considered as a collateral. So in case you are a startup, you would not get a loan from the bank. That has been abundantly clear. But having said that, there is a credit guarantee scheme where a professional, be it an engineer, a chartered accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, or any of the professions can go to a bank. And if you are 2 promoters or 3 promoters, each of you can raise 1 crore of rupees without security. Without security. But of course, your rate of interest would be trifle more. As I know, it must be 14.5% as we know. But that should be quite good enough for a startup. There would be a fall in the real estate value provided as collateral to the bank towards the OD facility. When we approach the bankers requesting for reduction in interest rate, can our bankers ask for a revaluation of the collateral? Absolutely, they can ask, Mr. Venkatesh, but they can ask only when we are doing a renewal of the loan. Right now, we are not looking at a renewal of our loan. There would be a fall on the security levels. The market would go down. The bank guidelines for valuation would go down. So we will face problems on that. There is no doubt about it. But when you are looking at a renegotiation of an interest, it is not a renewal. So I don't think there would be an issue relating to the collateral at that point of time. What is the benefit of converting working capital to a term loan will be beneficial? Can you explain? Mr. Deepak, that would really help, because right now when the previous question was asked, the debtors won't pay, so my drawing power will go down, my margin is in trouble. And at the same time, we'll have to go down and justify to the bank quarter to quarter, what is my stock, what is my sales, what is the movement in my account. But the moment we convert a working capital loan to a term loan, we have seen conversions happen with a moratorium, so you don't have to pay for 6 months at least. Second, your loan keeps getting reduced. So the situation would land up stating that you have a 1 crore working capital loan, you convert it to term loan. Every month you just repay an interest of 80,000 rupees or 90,000 rupees. So that way you're much more comfortable than trying to manage these margins all through. Can we restructure salary? Something is happening. Can we restructure salary? For example, change the portion of fixed and variable component? Absolutely, you can restructure, Mr. Anil. As stated, salary is purely a contractual arrangement unless it is a Factories Act where there is a Labor Act, and in case you have more than 100 people, you need to take government approval to retrench, so on and so forth, plus there is a trade union and stuff like that. But in a regular enterprise, restructuring a salary is purely a contractual obligation which you can do. And I recently read one of the viewers here by Nitin. Nitin had also posted to me that in Maharashtra, there has been a case which has been won by an entrepreneur. The court has already given the order stating that reduction of salary is purely a new contract. The court would not be able to enforce that salary cannot be reduced. Coming to say of that, as employers and entrepreneurs, from where do we get the money when the monies are blocked in every other place? But having said that, God has been kind. In Guru and Jana, we have been able to do reasonably well. We have covered fairly well. Is layoff or a low pay cut? How will it stand in the court of law? Mr. Sharath Tebriwal has asked. So layoff or a court of law would definitely not stay in the court of law. It's a contractual arrangement between you and the employee. It is pretty much cleared in many judgments. The layoff is possible. But having said that, you will have to follow the process if it is a labor layoff. If you are coming under the Labor Act, labor layoff has been laid out in the process. There is a very clearly documented process. You have to go through that. And you have to justify in that time to the labor court as to why are you laying off, you are going bankrupt, you do this. But in a software company situation, I don't have to justify to anybody. This is my new offer. Would you like to take it? Take it. If you don't like to take it, thank you very much. What are the penalties? The same answer would that. What about the disaster? Gosh, it's running all through. So I think if I run fast beyond this, it would definitely mean that I would be skimming at the answers. But what I would request all of you to do is, if you can give the full screen, Prashant, that would be better. And both Prashant and Sri Lakshmi can come on the screen. It would be very helpful. There are 79 questions, and I really would not like to just skim a single line answer for these things, because there's some questions which require a lot more deeper understanding, a lot more clarity of thought which is required. And when we reply back, we would bring back the Maharashtra court. And I also got another message from my colleague in Delhi. There has been a labor court judgment already in Delhi, where the labor court has held that deferment of salary is not retrenchment. You can defer the salary by 2 years. That is not going to be reduction of salary. Deferment of salary is not retrenchment. The Delhi tribunal has already held it back. Sri, can you please come on the screen also, please? So all these 79 questions, we would be happy to send the replies to you. I think today we are on Wednesday. By Saturday, we would be able to make a nice booklet of some 30-40 pages with adequate provisions of law. We will send it across to you, and I would thank everybody, and Prashant and Sri would propose the vote of thanks for all of you to be here. We would not like to hold you back for a longer time.
We thank all the participants for all the encouraging questions and also staying on for such a long time. We could see more than 450 participants had logged in, and due to paucity of time, we just pushed across. We'll make sure that we will do justice to all the questions you've raised. Prashant?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the really good patient hearing. We are sorry we crossed 1 hour. In fact, if we cover it more, maybe it may take 3-4 hours also. But then I think we have to look at the attention span these days, and based on that 1 hour, we find it quite sufficient. And thanks a lot for being here. And we are sure we'll come up with more interesting webinars going forward.
And all of you, please stay safe, stay indoors. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.